Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Talk back into the video today, and today we're going to be talking about a potential signing in the NBA for the San Antonio Spurs, as it was announced today by Bleacher Report that the San Antonio Spurs will be targeting Fred VanVleet in the free agency market, and not only that, but also be targeting Chris Paul, not only in the trade market, but in free agency as well, if Chris Paul gets waived. I like this. If you had to choose, you definitely go with Fred VanVleet. I already talked about, potential Chris Paul trade. I kind of thought maybe Doug McDermott, Zach Collins, the 33rd and 44th overall pick to Phoenix for Chris Paul potentially. It's not a bad offer for Chris Paul. But if you're going to go after somebody, either one of these guys, it probably is going to be Fred VanVleet. Averaged 19 points per game this season, was an all-star in the 21-22 season. Although I think Chris Paul and Victor Wembanyama would be a hell of a duo on the court, with Victor Wembanyama being amazing on offense, and then Chris Paul being an amazing facilitator, amazing passer, and just a really good point guard. He's not that great, scoring-wise anymore, only averaging 14 points per game this season, but he averaged 9 assists per game. I feel like it would go up in San Antonio. He's not going to, he might be scoring. Honestly, if he goes to San Antonio, I could see Chris Paul averaging way more than he averaged last season in Phoenix. I could probably see him averaging around 15 to 17 points per game. But I think his assists would probably go up. I could see Chris Paul averaging around maybe 15 and 10 on the San Antonio Spurs. But I think Fred VanVleet, it would be a nice target for the San Antonio Spurs. He's definitely a nice player, averaged 19 points per game with 7 assists per game. I think it'd be a little complicated because with Fred VanVleet, it's probably going to have to be a sign and trade. I don't know what you'd have to send them. Probably have to send like Devontae Graham and Zach Collins in a sign and trade to the Raptors. So that's not bad, but I feel like not only Chris Paul and Wemby would be good on the court with each other, but I feel like Chris Paul and Greg Popovich would be really good together with both their knowledge in the game of basketball. I feel like that's a duo, off the court and on the court that is Greg Popovich and Chris Paul. It just feels like both of them would work really well together, in my opinion. But, I think both are really good targets for the San Antonio Spurs. It just depends on which one they feel like is better for their team. But, honestly, in the long run, if you're talking about the long run, you go with Fred VanVleet. But, to set up Victor Wembanyama with Chris Paul for the first couple years of his career, because you're probably looking at Chris Paul spending a year or two in San Antonio. I would think Chris Paul would spend 2 years in San Antonio, maybe even 3. Because Chris Paul could probably play 3 years. He's not doing much. Set Victor Wembanyama up with Chris Paul for his first year or two in San Antonio. But at the same time, VanVleet would be there for mostly. I think VanVleet would probably be there most of his end of the career. VanVleet's looking to sign around a 4-year, 5-year deal. So if you want to set up a good team around Wemby, you go with Fred VanVleet. But Chris Paul's a cheap. It's kind of a cheap option. You can maybe get him for even cheaper, but who knows? But use them your thoughts, guys, and you guys have your thoughts if you think San Antonio should trade for Chris Paul or sign Fred VanVleet. I think it would be a decent signing for San Antonio. Peace out.